Right, good morning, guys. Thank God we are here, and as has been said today, purposely this week, it's the recording time, and so we're recording class, and this week, and then a holiday. You have a holiday. You will not suffer my troubles. So just relax. And then also because of the conference, we're not having tutorial as well in this week. But next week there'll be tutorial, but then there wouldn't be class because Thursday we're supposed to have a holiday, Idil Adha. And as a result of that, if we hold a class in the other, what do you call days, it will mean that the Thursday class will be disadvantaged. And so I have chosen to record, what do you call, the lectures for this week and next week. So I'm giving you that of this week. Next week I'll record next week's lecture, lecture 7, and share with you. So you just need to I mean, watch the video on YouTube, and then of course, Charlie, it's my channel, so support the project. You need to subscribe to the channel. You see what I mean? Subscribe to the channel. I upload videos every week on salient Christian issues, and so and you can see from the channel the number of some of the issues that are being dealt with, and so do well to subscribe so that whenever I upload a video or like next week's lecture video, as soon as I upload it, you'll get a notification. So just subscribe, hit the notification button and the subscription and notification button. That's all right. So as for the IA, the least said the better. I don't want to comment on it and pretend it did everything was fine. So I won't comment on the IA for now. But let's see how things goes. There are many people who could not write and are flooding me with text message and call and emails. I told you that if you miss it, 30 marks. I don't know how to make up for you. I don't know what option. And when you call it, like, want to see what we can do about. I have not committed to anything. So what we can do about it, saying anyway. So let's see. Let's see. I'm not promising anything because there's very little I can do about it. And let's hope for the better. I don't even know. Right. So purposely for this week, we are dealing with um the 6th week, and we're going to talk about the missionary enterprise. The missionary enterprise. And so basically, as you can see, it is not um we are leaving the Roman Empire. Many of you are now tired with Roman Empire, Augustine, Nero, persecution, martyrdom, and all those things. And now we have come home. Oh dear, you guys, you are interested, but I can't so we are focusing attention on how the church ventured into parts of Africa, or how the church was unveiled, so to say, in our part of the world. And so that is what we mean by the missionary enterprise. And by the missionary enterprise, we're saying that as you look at this picture, it reminds us of the first missionaries who came to West Africa, and they actually landed on what do you call the land that is Ghanaian. They landed on Elmina, and they were under the command of Don Diego de Ajambuja. And so you can see his picture, and then you can also see, as it were, the castle that came up. Yeah, so that is just about it. So, by way of introduction, what we are saying is that Christianity in West Africa began in Elmina. So, this is a very important point, that when Christianity had to start, it began in Elmina. I mean, particularly in West Africa, because even before this time, there's been events of Christianity in other parts of what you call Africa, even in the days of Jesus Christ, not just Christianity. Drew Africa did that. Yeah, and I'm going to give you a basis. But even more importantly, um, when missionary activities were begun, it started from Elmina, our part of the world that you see what happened. Now, we're saying that God was already in the African, what do you call, context before the arrival of Christianity. And this is important because some people tend to maintain that Christianity is a European religion and that it is not African. But you see, if you are true to history, you would realize, and you are a good theologian, you cannot argue that way and say that Africans did not know God and that Africa already knew God. Look, if you meet a European right now and you greet him or her, good morning, he will say good morning. But if you meet what do you call an Ashanti and you greet him at the same, he will respond Nyame Adom. So between me, the African, and the European, who knows God? So that you realize that in the life of the African, I mean, God is so predominant in our words, in our proverbs, in our way of doing things, our symbols, and everything that we do. Much, however, it's not that much in the European way of doing things, and yet we say that Christianity is a European religion. So anybody who argues that way doesn't really know what's up. Christianity cannot be a European religion, but that we say that Mission Day, that is to say that God was already in the culture. Mission Day, Mission Day, okay? So that God was already in the African culture before the Europeans came here. And even the Europeans used Africans to be able to reach the impact that they made, because when they came they could not speak the local language. So how were they going to um, minister, or so to say, how were they going to interact with the indigens and spread the gospel? They could only do that through African agents. Why do we call them African agents? Are they not missionaries themselves? Because look, if somebody can do translation and do it well, that person is of equal standard with the one who is speaking. I mean, can you imagine? You see, if you go to my role models church, Obinim, you know, if you go to my role models church, you know that the one who does the translation for me is also a pastor. And you see the way he is able to translate. Master, when engineer kutina one kasabo say yes, what so it's just like that. So the Africans were those who led these missionaries. They guided them, they provided them with hospitality, they carried their things, and when they spoke, it was the Africans who did the translations. And so the Africans are equally missionaries. And so we cannot devoid the African activity from what the Europeans did and say that it was only the Europeans who were. No, 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 no. And so Africans have been part of the mission activities, and so they help. Now, when we say that Christianity is not a European religion, we're also saying that Africans have played significant role. And from scriptural perspective, you know that when Christ was born, and the what do you call, the Herod wanted to kill him, the angel of God told Joseph and Mary to send what do you call Jesus, the baby Jesus, to Egypt. I am not sure Egypt is in Asia or is in Europe. Egypt is in Africa. Egypt is in Africa. And so Africans had contact with Jesus. Again, you see, when Jesus was to be crucified, those of you who don't go to church, you cry, you know, when Jesus was to be crucified and he was carrying his cross and was tired and they needed somebody to help him. We're told that there was a guy who was asked to help Jesus, and that guy is Simon. Simon, and we are told that that guy is from Simon of Cyrene. Okay, and Cyrene is in the province of Libya, and I'm not sure Libya is in America. And so, an African was the one who helped Jesus to carry his cross. Can you imagine? And then we see that Africans do not know God. I mean, it took an African to help Jesus carry the cross. Further, we're told that Simon is in history, Simon is the father of Rufus and Alexander, who became prominent Christians. And so the whole idea was that this Simon carried them and took them to what do you call brought the faith to where he was, and when he got there he shared the gospel with other persons and they also became Christians in essence and in other ways. And so you cannot divorce Christianity from an African perspective. Further, we're told, if you have your Bibles, those of you who have Bible, Master, only Bible to cry will phone so. Just check. If you look at Acts chapter 2, you have examples of what do you call the list of people who received the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost. And on that day, you are told that there were a number of people in Jerusalem. There were a number of people who had gathered, and they heard the people of the disciples speaking in unknown language. Now, what was happening was that these people had come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Week, which was a Jewish festival. And the scripture was careful to identify certain names. Scripture was able to identify persons and other what do you call groups who had come to Jerusalem. And in providing the list, you realize that there were some people. It says that and people of Cyrene of Libya. Cyrene of Libya. And so, in essence, you already have on the day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit is said to have descended on the disciples, there were Libyans, there were people from Cyrene there. And so, then how can you then argue that Christianity is what do you call a European religion? From scriptural perspective, you can see Christians already in there. And then Cyrene is also a place where the church in Antioch was founded. And in the scripture, you hear about Simon the black man, who was an Egyptian who is said to have worried Kakra, Paul Kakra in his missionary journey, who wanted, no, Peter, he wanted the grace, and then he's brought out money and to buy the grace to do wonders. He was a magician. And he was a black man. We are told Simon the black man. He was a black man. So Africans have played significant role. In essence, you know about the Ethiopian Enoch who was encountered by Philip on his way. I mean, I'm not sure Ethiopia is in America, and or Ethiopia cannot be in America. And so, if the Ethiopian Enoch is an Ethiopian, and an Ethiopian Enoch no or a European, it can't be. He was an Ethiopian, and being an Ethiopian and encountering Philip, it is sure that wherever he went, he would spread the Christian faith with other persons. And so, I mean, when you hear people talk about things they don't know or do not have a strong foundation in what they are saying, now you are scholars. As I said, you are scholars, and so you have to correct them that no. Even from scriptural perspective, you can see that Christianity has ever been present with us. So let's talk about how Christianity got into our part of the world. And we're saying that this was through the efforts of the Portuguese mission who arrived in Ghana in 1420. And when they arrived in Elmina, And so you have the Elmina Castle in picture, as you can see. And I've already told you that the what you call the voyage was led by Don Diego de Ajambuja. And that's a picture of him. You see, actually, akwe ne ho ye pa wohwɛ the way ogyina hɔ na ɔbɛma mu, I tell you. Right. So that is the Portuguese mission and how they came to are part of the, basically what commissioned the Portuguese mission was Prince Henry, who ordered it, and under the Pope, who felt that the Romans had lost a lot of territories to the Protestants, and so they needed to capture them. And they also sought to find new routes to India for trade, because the usual routes were full of barbarians, people who would just arrest them and do all kinds. You see, those of you who like Jack Sparrow. Oh yes, Jack Sparrow. Jack Toronto. You see, if you've watched that movie, you see the way they capture people on the sea and take their things from them and all of those things. So those barbarians were on the sea, and so they needed to find new routes to India, and that was why, as they were going, they discovered land somewhere and they came there. And these were the Portuguese. And when they got here, we are told that they got here on the 20th of January 1482. 20th January, it was a Sunday, 1482. And when they got here, it was over 600 men under the command of Don Diego de Ajambuja. And they got to Elmina. Now, the place was not called Elmina, but when they got there, they named the place Elmina because of the mineral resources that they saw. And so they saw the place as the mine, that Elmina. So this one, I'm speaking Portugal for Portuguese language. One Ghanaian language. So this is a Portuguese word, and so they call it the mine. And today the name has sustained till now. No, you see, as soon as they got here, they got to Elmina, they hoisted their flag, and then we are told that they held the first communion. The truth of the matter is that these voyages, when they are going, usually they have a priest on board to minister to their spiritual needs. And so they carry along these priests. So as soon as they got on land, they hoisted the flag. And after doing that, they quickly, gave or participated in the first mass. Mo a monkɔ asɔre pa no monni mass. Ba wokɔ asɔre pa. Mass is more like the service that they held, and then they had the communion over there. But their stay over there, they had some interactions and a lot of things. In fact, it is said that the chief of the place, the way they sometimes they capture the whole thing, the chief of the people of Elmina at the time, who were told is Kwamena Ansa, Kwamena Ansa. But in their diaries and records, they because they could not say Kwamena Ansa, they captured it Karmansa, Karmansa. That was how they. Right. So the way they spelled the name Kwame Nansa can be very interesting for a lot of reasons. Now we're saying that the Portuguese mission was not very successful. It had a lot of challenges, and some of the reasons why it had challenges was that the people were more interested in trade than evangelism. Those who came were not missionaries, they were explorers. They were people who were more into trade rather than evangelism. And so they were more interested, and now they get here and look at, as soon as they got here, look at the name they gave to the land. You go to somebody's place and then you name the place, because they saw gold and mineral resources. As soon as they saw them, they called the mine. And you be depleted. So they started taking a lot of things. And then again, the moral life of the missionaries and the people. You see, the problem was that, typically as Africans, we have certain things that we hold in high esteem. But the Europeans also have their own. You see, my days in during my master, I there were times where I had to ask myself whether in Sanoma Ebony and answer in your body. Because you go to church and also for is a drunk. Also for I told you my example where uh, I got there and I went to church. I looked for Methodist church. I couldn't find. Then later I got a small Methodist church somewhere. Then I got there and the Osofo who after the service had preached, I went to him and he was standing outside, wine in one hand, cigarette in the other. Ah, bozege. Osofo Oshibori. Wine in one hand, cigarette in the other. And it was not as if he was doing it in secret. He was doing it with some elders of the church who also had wine or cigarette, and both of them, and they were chatting. Can you imagine? Then the Osofo asked me what I'm doing here in Denmark. I told him, oh, I'm here to study. He says, to study what? Theology. To study theology in Denmark? Then also asked me that am I here alone? I said, yeah. He said, Denmark is a very cold country, and that if you need somebody to help you in the night, I'll be able to arrange for someone. They say, boy, yeah, also for sign a year between or be pege mame. Chere mame sing. But it's fine. And over there, it's okay. Now, what we're saying is that when the missionaries came, the type of lifestyle that they were living, I mean, they could drink, they could smoke. And so the indigents were worried that, look, you cannot call yourself a religious agent and then you do all kinds of things which we define as immoral. So that was also a blockade from people being receptive to what you call the evangelistic, what you call move. Again, malaria in terms of health. You see, the name is malaria, okay, malaria, which was in case of the health. You see, when they came, they died in rapid succession, and so Africa was defined as the white man's grave. When the Africans are here, because system is adapted to the malaria, we are able to survive, but they could not survive that much as we could. And then there were financial challenges that they had. They had a lot of financial challenge because you see, the work of mission is expensive. You need money to be able to do the way it has to be done. Further to this was language barrier. Language barrier. That time when they came, we didn't know English. They couldn't also speak our language. So how are they going to interact? How are they going to spread the word? How are they going to tell us what they wanted us to hear? So that was a problem. And for many of them, they looked on to what we call mass conversion. They felt that, oh, once we have entered the village and the chief is, we've been able to sort of have interactions with the chief, then it means that the whole community is saved. Forget it. Forget it. Even if your father is an osofo, you need to accept Jesus as your personal savior and Lord. Other than that, I tell you, if you don't have a place to sleep and you sleep in a garage, you don't become a car. Oh yeah, how did we get Christian? My father is an osofo. I was born into the church. We were born into the church. Now who told you? Jesus was born in a manger. Is Jesus a sheep or a goat? Maza, kopenya mibia fa na kopeno na fa na jai zamana na abo ho no. So they were using mass barrier, thinking that once they have converted, what do you call the chiefs, then the people are also converted, but that is not correct. And then also there was also a problem of the resemblance between the missionaries and the rulers. You see, they were all Europeans, they were all whites, and so it was rather difficult for the indigents to be able to separate who the missionaries were and who the colonizers or the European political agents were. So that you see, they are all white, and sometimes it's difficult to differentiate between them. It's just the same way that as blacks, when we go to Europe, they are not able to distinguish between us, and they are like, your brother came here, your brother. They are not able to tell the difference. So those who go abroad, sometimes somebody, even a male, will be using a female passport, and they are not able, they are sometimes not able to determine the difference because of the color and because of our behavior. And this was because, you see, one of the major problems is the development of Ofrijato. You know Ofrijato? I didn't say it. Mulattoes. What kind of when you say it in English, it's nice. Mulattoes. These people were largely as a result of intercourse between the European men and the African girls. So the point is that as a father, my daughter has been impregnated by a European man, and that European man is white. So if I see another white person coming to, as it were, tell me about a god, I mean, you yourself, you have had sex, you have um, like premarital sex with my daughter, and now you are coming to tell me about God, you are coming to tell me about morality. Why will I be receptive? Why will I be receptive? Because just like you see some of you, maybe ana Jerry be a break you heart into say me Jerry or MT so opera class also or the Jerry and Tiwumpen because or the Jerry just like that. Sorry for Jerry. Oh, Jerry, I'm a so basically, what we are saying is that it was rather difficult for the Africans to draw a line of dichotomy between who the Europeans really were. Now let's go into some of the missionary groups that came around, and let's begin with we see the penny. So let me start off with the Catholic mission, and you see these giants, very important person. And because this is an introductory course, I'm not going to go into detail. Even what I've said already, I mean, you can see that you just need an idea of where we have come from and how situations have been, and that is why I'm good. Hey, na de manya me fo slice na etwa gui ya de yagobo any for phone slide the bag no etwa picture na de ato slide na meme slide aje se wadi gari kotoku edu in 1 hour answer say wenya I won't give it the choice I'm na better minka. Anyway, so these are the issues of the Catholic mission. Now, it is important to note that the Catholics were the first to evangelize Africa. I mean, in that period, because I've already told you of why they began, owing to the fact that they were losing some grounds and losing some areas, and so they were first. But the Catholics were not Protestants. One in Protestant. It's like mainline churches. No more doing papa. Then someone doing execute it. Not Pentecostals. Not be fire in ye. Don't mind them. They are like that. Anyway, so what we are saying is that when they arrived in Elmina and said the first mass is themed or is identified as the first what they call time when they got here, and some of their major players included Sir James Marshall, Augustine Moreau, and Eugene Morat. These are the people you saw. So those of you who are Catholics, you know you have the Marshallans. It's after the activities of James Marshall, and these members who have contributed immensely to Christianity or Catholicism in Ghana, particularly in Ghana and in some parts of Africa, including Nigeria and Ivory Coast. They have contributed immensely and gave up their lives to come and live here and invest in a lot of things from the SMA, Society for Mission Africa. And they did all that they could do. And these are some of the places where they ministered and the others. You know, in the Catholic Church, there are various groups who engage in different things. And so you can see the Portuguese mission, you can see the order of Hermit, that is the Saint Augustine, and then the Capuchin order of Brittany, and then the Spanish Capuchinos, and then the French Dominicans. The Dominicans were here for quite some time. They did a lot of work, and you can see they were here from 1688 to 1703. They were one of the groups who stayed quite longer and had some good impact with a lot of sacrifices. The strategy of the Catholic Church in their missionary effort was to establish schools as a medium of evangelism. See, basically, these missionary groups, when they came, they used school as a means of evangelization. So when they came, they taught, they established school so that as the children come to school or as the people come to school, then they would also be telling them about the gospel message. As they come to school, they learn about the English language so that it helps in communication. As they come to school, then once they are trained in the language, they are able to use them as interpreters to their evangelistic activities. And then a very important strategy of the missionary activities, not just the Catholics, but almost all of them, is to engage in translation. And translation is very important. When the people can read and write, or they can read in their language, is better. It's better. It resonates with them very well. You see, the indigenous language is very important, and it must be upheld by the citizens, because that is what makes you. Language is very key, extremely key. Why do you think that in the Tower of Babel, when God wanted to stop them, he had to confuse their language by giving them different languages? And so when they had to translate part of their theology, part of their the scriptures into the local language, it was a way to indigenize. It was a way to make the religion a home with the people from whom they are come. I mean, how many of you dream and you dream in English? So hear me. Also, there, I'm good. I'm this. I'm this. Mintichi, mintichi, mintichi. Also, there also no that no of you. Oh yeah, yeah, muhammad. Best good. And I say, man, so kurasi ana mufri. Boy, yeah, boy. Anyway, so you see, the work of translation was very key for the missionaries. And again, when they came, they did not separate themselves. They settled amongst the people. They dwelt with the people so that they will live among them, feel their feelings, and understand them. Again, they also provided health facilities. So, you know, the Bator Hospital and many other clinics and hospitals established by the Catholics, because when the people are healthy, they'll be able to respond well to the gospel message. Because you see, if you're able to touch the person's heart, then you'll be able to touch his soul as well. And so the provision of social amenities, that's what we call the social evangelism. You see, you meet the people. I mean, you go to somebody to tell the person about Christ. The person is hungry. You see, oh, Jesus is the bread of life. Bread of life, I understand. Bra, manu 10 cedi bi non kope go baby non fan settle na ade bi no we are Kenya so much obi de bi obeti o. Ah, na also there. God love you. God love you, massa. Than a dynamic human feeling. And then they were involved in the indigenous people to reach out to their needs and all other stuff. Let's talk about the Basel mission. The Basel mission, we started in Switzerland, later became the German Missionary Society in 1815, and then from there it moved on to the Basel Evangelical Missionary Society, and it settled as the Basel Mission. And these missionaries came around to do some great work, which later was taken over by the Jamaicans, and then they became Presbyterian. And some of the major, what they call missionaries of the Basel Mission and the Presbyterian Mission include Andrew Rees, and then Ramsia. Ramsia, Fritz Augustus Ramsia. And so you realize that many of the Presbyterian institutions are named after these two giants. I like the case of Andrew Rees when he went to Ekropon, and then he was treated fairly. Sure, who say man no day? Now, sorry, I'll say your friend is saying, oh, sir, and son, Nenimia White, and your friend is saying, palm wine. Hey. But look at the Presbyterian mission. They were also very much, in terms of their impact, they were also very much involved in translation into the Equiapem language and Ghana, particularly in Ghana. Zimmerman did a lot of these translations, and it helped. And a major contribution of the Basel mission to the economy and agriculture is the development of cocoa. is the development of cocoa. You see, we say that the Basel mission were the first to bring cocoa to what do you call Ghana, and when they brought it, they planted it, but then that breed was not um, too good with our weather over here, and so at the time, Tetekwashi is said to be working with the Basel workshop in Mampong. And so he saw that, what he call, bean. And so when he had his way to Fernando Po, and he saw a similar bean because he had seen one by the Basel missions, he saw a similar one in Fernando Po. And so he carried it along with him and brought it. And in fact, when he brought the cocoa, it was because he had seen one. And so if the Basel mission had not brought, just that, like I've said, that what you call breed was not compatible with our weather here, so it didn't do that much well. But the one from Fernando Po was very well received in our culture, and it did a lot of good. And so the Basel farms and their workshops were used, and they use, you see, once they provide these workshops and people come to work there, they will do morning devotion, they will do some level of interaction. You see, if somebody is your boss, whatever he says, yes, I'm master. So you respond to the gospel message that they are bringing. And the Presbyterians also established a lot of health centers and healthcare all around. If you go to a Cropon, you go to Abetifin, you see and you feel their presence all around. And so they use these as systems of ministering the gospel. You know, sometimes these days when you are doing evangelism, you are doing missionary work, you see that the people will add how do you call it, medical evangelism attached to it. So healthcare, the provision of healthcare, and I mean Presbyterian schools. They are everywhere. If for nothing at all, we are serving a living God. Presec. We serve a living God. Presec and brilliant science. In my days, it was called brilliant science and math quiz. Brilliant seminar, and be a hobby. Mama maybe I sent them to mama to be uncle said, no, semina blue. Long bar. You use that in place of key soap. Oh, yeah, radi nema pabako. And namu de na munim. Namo alata semina mahubida. Eh, yeah, time near chichiro cement paper mu. They say Mwanka Sakura. Abrofu bi man yede mabegu ha computer babies and guests. Anyway, so the Catholics, the Presbyterians also use education in propagating the Christian message. Now, the Wesleyan mission, um, also missionaries were also here who became the Methodists, and for them, their history starts with the Castle School, and whilst they were there, there was one of the students called William de Graft. William de Graft, who, you see, at the time, they were using the Castle School, use the Bible as an English textbook. So whilst they read the Bible, they will be learning how to read and write English. And by that, William de Graft realized that the Jews did not eat pork, and yet the chief meat of the Europeans is pork. And so he started a campaign to say that no, Christians should not eat pork. And the then headmaster of the school, Joseph Smith, got angry with him. He was detained, imprisoned, beaten, and sacked from the school. It was then that he found himself in Discourse, and he met a guy, Captain Porter, who was a Methodist and coming to Europe, and told him that he has a group of individuals that they meet in Cape Coast who were called the Bible Band. The Bible Band. They met to read the Bible, and yet they don't have copies of the Bible. And so when he's coming, he should bring them a Bible. Then Porter returns with a missionary, and he helped. So the missionary Porter came with was Joseph Rhodes Downwell, who became the first Methodist missionary in Ghana. And that is why many of some Methodist institutions and chapels are named after Downwell. But he died just about 6 months of arrival, and then George Wingley and Peter Harrop and their wives all followed suit later, but they died quickly. And so later they looked for a black man, someone who has a black lineage, who they found in Thomas Beach Freeman, and then he also came and contributed his quota. The Methodist mission also used education. So manko school papa no say school secondary school the papa ne or dance school. Ti mo call infante pem ne your friend is saying Wesley girls ne ade no say mo school papa nko. But these are institutions of the Methodist schools. Ubeko school eno ane or dance school DC kwachi Eddie can't say Kwame Nkrumah has disappointed me to come and open this pipe, open people fetch drink. Or dance school. Hey, or dance school names. How are you marching without a song on? That's a school. So the Methodist mission use a lot of education. They also use a lot of health, and they establish a lot of health centers like the Ankasi Hospital and others. And then they use agriculture as a means of meeting the missionary needs. And they also engage in a lot of translation. They wrote a lot of their things in the Fanti language. To the Methodists for their Fanti and then the Bremen mission, which also started in Hamburg, came to Ghana, but they were very strategic from the 1847. They were very strategic. They maintained their presence in the Everland, and that was also because of colonialism. You know, the Bremans and the Europeans no monka into no yama munyina montna monko baby far away from the city. And so the Bremans were largely in the Everland, and they made a lot of impact by way of education. They established a lot of schools. So if you go to what do you call Hohoy, you go to oh, this my place, I remember and tell you, you find a lot of the Bremans. That's why you have a lot of EP. They have a lot of what do you call health centers, and they did a lot of work in translation. In fact, what they usually did was to pick the people here and then take them to what do you call Germany and train them in because they would have done all the development of the language over there, and then they would do the translation and bring them back here so that they would impact the people hearing. So generally, the missionary enterprise faced three major problems. Number one, if you look at it, it was a problem of health. I've already told you that Africa became what do you call a den for the white man, so that when they came, they died in quick succession. At most 9 months, 1 year, they are dead, and yet they kept coming. Their health was a major problem for them because of malaria, mosquitoes. Why are you? Oh, jai. Okay, so they will bite them and then they will die. And yet they will not stop. They will keep coming. Such a resilient people who would not give up on what they suffered. Again, was the issue of language. You know, they didn't understand that. We also didn't understand them. And so they had to work a lot better. And by that, they needed translators who sometimes can be very interesting. I remember I watched one of these, what do you call them? Old movies, and when look at the translations, see, hey, and Jesus went through Virginia. Okay, and so they did translations, and then they had a problem with finance. A lot of the challenges they had was also with finance, because evangelism is very expensive these days. It's even worse. Look at the sound systems that how do you call DAC will carry around the villages and be doing evangelism. And then when you look at what the Methodists and the Presbyterians, Catholic, what money can do. When Lighthouse is coming, you see big trucks following, and when they set up, Even if you are at home and your coin falls down, you hear it in the speakers. But I tell you, it's all money. It's money, and you must put in money. And you know the way some of you behave when they have all Christian weeks. Some of you not when you are then give us this day our daily bread. You get your daily bread because when they do the altar call, when you go, you get your supper. Monhwɛ yie monhwɛ yie wode wo ho ma Awurade afa ho ma Awurade yie na agyae aduane no maka akyerɛ wo. So they face a lot of financial challenges in the missionary enterprise. So as a result of these major challenges, like I said, these are the major challenges. There are other troubles that they faced, and they try to surmount them though. But as a result of these, it became necessary to usher in the Africanization program. I mean, how they will involve Africans in the work of evangelism. You see, the challenges led them to think and to look out for ways to make up for it. It was in this that Henry Venn, a secretary to the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, introduce a theory which is called the theory of the self, so that they can deal with these challenges that they face. And he introduced this theory of the self-governing, self-financing, and self-propagating. So he mentions that these three are very important if the missionary work can go on. In doing this, self-governing meant that the African churches should rule themselves. They should elect their own leaders and make rules for the people, so that it won't be European missionaries who will come and be the missionaries and be their leaders and blah 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 blah. No, but that the Africans will have their own leaders, because if your own person is leading you, it's better. In any case, that was why we went for independence. This meant that the local people should have their own leaders to govern them, and not to be dictated to by missionaries, you see, but that their own people are making the impact on them. This was to deal with the successive death of the missionaries, because if the Africans are leading themselves, then you wouldn't have need of missionaries coming from elsewhere to come and, as it were, lead the people and make rules, so that they can also enjoy life more. So that is self-governing. That is to say that the Africans should be led by Africans. You see, so that let's say, can you imagine if the Church of Pentecost was led by a European? And you're fine. That's what I say. Well, I hear Apostle Eric Nyamiche, what he's doing to the Church of Pentecost. Anye Biakra, almost see prisons. Self-financing is also one of the strategies. We've already mentioned that the missionary efforts suffered from, as it were, financial contributions. And so Henry Venn talks about self-financing. By self-financing, he says the Africans should raise monies to support the missionary work by themselves, so that monies would not be solicited from overseas or from Europe. The from, you need to check it. So from Europe and from other places, because sometimes the monies were not forthcoming, because Charlie, uh, money is strong. You see what I mean? Therefore, the planted churches should plant their own farms and use the proceeds to support themselves. And that was when they started the church farms, so that by the church farms they will cultivate, what do you call, plants. They will do all kinds of things in order that they can sell the proceeds and then support themselves. And so that falls under church financing. And that when they have done this, they establish factories and workplaces. And when they have these farms and the women come to work, as they work, they'll be singing. And when the songs they sing are theological. So you use that even as what you call evangelistic activities, where they had factories like the metal factories and the processing factories, where men would also come. So whereas the schools are for the children, the farm work for the women and the men, and then the factory work for the adults as well, so that they will be ministering to them while they make money as well. And when they have done that, their financial needs would be met. So the final proposal from Henry Venn, which is the self-propagating, Henry Venn means that the Africans should evangelize their own people. You see, I mean, if an African is telling you about his or her experience, you can much more understand it than a European telling you his or her experience, which you can't understand. Because these are Africans, the Africans should rather go ahead and map up strategies to win their own people. And that would boost the membership, because then the Africans themselves can be used by God. It is not as if God uses only the white man or the European, but God can use the African. So self propagation was also very important. And when the Africans are by themselves sharing the word of God, it helped. And when they have done this, it helped to deal with the problem of language. It helped with the problem of cost, because if we have to bring a missionary from abroad, it's more costly than for us to train the Africans to master the missionary activity as African missionaries. And then also, invariably, the rate at which our people would be dying would be saved. And so they did this. And before I end this lecture, this Africanization process is felt in some persons who they train. I just want to take three of them, and I'm starting with Philip Kwaku. Philip Kwaku. Philip Kwaku was a pioneer educator and an evangelist, and the first African Anglican missionary in the Gold Coast. And you can see somewhat picture of him. Uh, it's not easy to get a picture of Philip Kwaku. In fact, we are told that he was the son of Brimpong Kuju, a successful cobbler, a chief of what do you call Cape Coast, and then he was taken abroad to be trained and then to come back. In fact, there were three of them who were taken on that journey. Um, One suffered chicken pox and died. The other got mad and died. Omufifo. Omufifo. Nkeshia bi. Kwe. Isani osalutu amei. You don't play with home people. Their home people did not allow them to get to Europe and to survive. So out of the three, it was only Philip Kwaku who survived. He went to school, he was trained, and then he was brought back. And when he came, was brought back to the castle school. He started a mulatto school, a small mulatto school, so that he could train people. Kweku gave religious instructions and taught reading and writing, arithmetic, and many of the children learned how to read and write. His religious work did not, however, prosper. In fact, as at 1774, we are told that he had baptized only 52 persons, and only few of them were Africans. Most of them were even European. But he suffered a lot of what they call distractions. I mean, we'll discuss more about him and this whole missionary work. If you continue to read religion, there's a course in West African church history where you hear more about the way Philip Kwaku, especially this one, let me say it, Philip Kwaku, especially when he was taken, and by the time he came back, Philip Kwaku could not speak his local language again. Just the way some of you during vacation, you go abroad, and then when you come back, I don't understand tree. I don't understand tree. I don't understand tree. You don't understand anything about your local language. Now, this guy, he was doing himself. I don't know tree. I don't know tree. I don't know tree. Then the taxi driver who took him charged him from Oponglu to campus. He charged him what you call 50 cedis. So the taxi driver thought that he's Obroni, so onim 50 cedis. Say, hey, masa, oh, Oponglu bahaya na asem to wa Obroni okatwi. Afedio okatwi say wenya. Philip Kwaku could not speak Twi. And that was, well, that was a major problem for him when he had to work, and so it affected his missionary work. He could not speak the local language and was married to a European, and that alienated him from his own people, and so they were not quite receptive to him. But at least one of the major things that we remember Philip Kwaku for is the fact that he introduced school uniforms. So in my days, we were wearing kukunte and in Katenkwan. You see, the brown, both of them are brown. And okay, whatever. You see, young cause I told you, young just anti in Montessori, no, Montessori, by the way. Anyway, so Philip Kwaku was the one who is said to have introduced school uniforms for children in order that they will look smart and look good and be well presented. Now let's talk about Jacobus Eliezer Johannes Capitan. Well, Ghana and as a Bibinia or Jacobus Eliezer Johannes Capitan. We ye better ye who was 1717 to 1747. Now, Jacobus Capitan was a pioneer educator, formal educator in the Gold Coast, and he's likely to have been a Fanti, although nothing is known about his birthplace and all of that. You can see his picture here said in Afonona, unse away Fanti Yampa, unse Fanti for the nam, or this can be sit down, or basic down when they am. If you could have some Fanti. He was sold as a slave and at the age of 7 or 8, we are not so sure as to what age. And when he went, fortunately slave trade had been abandoned, and so he was taken through education in Amsterdam and was ordained a priest and appointed a school master and sent to the castle school in Elmina to be a teacher of the Dutch Reformed Church. And he reduced the local language into writing, so he got into the work of translation, and he revived the castle school. Apart from compiling a fancy Dutch grammar, he had the Lord's Prayer, part of the Catechism, and the 12 Articles of Beliefs and the 10 Commandments were published in Fanti. So he did all these translational work for the work of mission, and these are to be applauded and seen as very useful, because once it's in the local language, you are able to relate to and you're able to what do you call, make them useful for others. But Capitan died in February 1747 out of his work. Now let's finish up with uh, Christian Jacob Protein. Christian Jacob Protein. He was a mulatto. You can mulatto, it means or you free to mama uncle school pano. Oh, call dance squad. We simple. So mulatto, he was a mulatto guy who was taken abroad, trained and retained in the 18th century as a schoolmaster also, and he was a son of a daughter of a Ghana chief and of a Danish soldier father. So that explains his mulatto status. His mother was a Ghana princess, and then what do you call, his father was a Danish soldier. So he was taken to Copenhagen, where say me was me can me na me Copenhagen. How? Obi amatena Denmark that deɛ ɔho sɛ mekumi ka ne Copenhagen sɛ bɛyɛ a sɛ mowɔ sika bi a na mode akyɛ me. At the age of 12, and he was trained by Frederick Peterson. Now he wrote the grammatical introduction to the Fanti and the Ghana language. That is the work of translation, and translated Martin Luther's catechism into Ghana and Fanti. Genius work done by these people to help Christianity gain roots in our part of the world. And he started the boarding school in the castle, what do you call, in the Elmina Castle. He began a boarding school so that he could well train them. However, he had a major problem. He liked menka ne simple. Akwan wabo utumi boa. He liked his alcohol, and that was a major problem. And again, because he was married to a Danish lady, it was a bit alienating that his people did not feel that he was actually with them, and he blended well with them. Okay, so Charlie, minda neshio, we wala don, ma join your friend, akenye ebie, ni nyebo mitwe. What I'm saying is that in all of this, let's see how things will go. Particularly for those of you who are not able to do the test, I'm not sure of what can be done, because the fact of the matter is that It is only once, and I cannot organize another IA for you. If I say I'm giving a test, all those who came to write, they will also come and write. Look at your numbers. How much time are we going to take to mark again and all of that? And if you want to give a second chance, then those who will not do well too, what will you do for them? Because we have started marking an interesting revelation. Hey, hey, now Moko school, the kind of things that you people are writing. Hmm. I've told you I won't comment on there. So I'm not commenting. Bad you anyway. So like I've said, this week because of the conference, there is no lecture and everything is frozen. Next week, because of the holiday, there wouldn't be lecture. I'll record again and share with you. But tutorials will come up. Although this week tutorial is not coming, but next week there'll be tutorials. And remember that basically in the 8th week, that is about 2 weeks from this week, we'll take a test on Sakai. That is going to be on Sakai for 10 marks, so that then we'd have finished with a continuous assessment of 50. Your class participation, your tutorial participation, 10 marks, that's in 5 5. And then the 30 marks for the IA that was done, and 10 marks to be done later. So just know and tell me, because I told you to come early when you are telling me my car was something. Hey, anyway, so Charlie, thank you so very much for being here. And if you have any questions, even though we are not having tutorials, if you have any questions, you can reach out and we'll see how best we can help. The WhatsApp platform is there, and you have the contact of the what do you call TAs as well. Then they are ever ready to help you. So take good care of yourself, be good, and know that time is going. So see you, and I'll catch you next week again on this platform. I've asked you, I mean, subscribe to the channel. See, subscribe, just subscribe. So that when I upload the videos, you see already. So subscribe. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Take good care and be good. Bye.